And as I mentioned, who do we have with us? He's right here, Attorney Steve Seidman, America's Heroes Group Advisory Board member and sponsor. Counselor, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Cliff. Nice to see you again.
Always a pleasure to see you. Always a pleasure to see you. Also with us, we have on our live line Stephen Handwerker, who is an Iraq veteran Army specialist and the third person deployed to Iraq. And Mr. Handwerker, thank you so much for being with us
today.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Thank you for
that's
having me
good.
today.
That's good. Thank you so much. Before we go further, we want to hear an audio clip from WGN Channel 9 featuring Mr. Handwerker.
After the September 11th attacks, many were called to service. We're talking to two men who answered that call. Ray is an Army captain, and he was what he called kind of retired as an individual, ready reserve. After the attacks, he voluntarily returned to active duty and was deployed to Iraq. And Stephen joined the Army and was sent to Baghdad.
They join us this morning, and thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
I always wonder what it's like looking back on this anniversary when it was so impactful on what you all did following that attack. Why don't you take us through that day?
Well, September 11th, when it happened, I actually saw the second tower get hit. And when I was watching it, as every American was, I felt violated.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a daughter, and right then the thoughts started thinking. And then on Thursday, that morning, I took her to school, for physical for school, and she jumped up and gave me a hug and said, "Daddy, I love you." And right then I knew it was time to go.
Wow. And how about you, Ray?
Well, as I was watching the footage over and over again, like I said, I'd been in IRR for a while.
And that means you were in the Army, but you were on a reserve basis at this point, right?
A completely reserve basis, not drilling, not in a unit or
like
anything
kind
like
of
that.
semi-retired almost?
Semi-retired,
okay.
but not drawn retired pay.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know what happened initially. Didn't know. I don't think anybody did know exactly what was going on, but I knew that something big was going to happen and that a lot of servicemen were going to be called up and go. And I just knew if they were going to go, I had to go with them.
What are your thoughts so that you can communicate to people about war? The average person who has not been to war has an idea of what it is from the movies, or what is it like? Does it change your perspective of what we should be doing in the future, especially when it comes to a place like Afghanistan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that the things that people just can't possibly understand without being there is the smell and the tedium and the special kind of anxiety, but also the special kind of purpose that that you develop if you're staying on task. But really the most striking sense I had driving into and through Baghdad a couple of days into the invasion was the stench of death. Mm-hmm. And how pervasive that was, and it was just everywhere, and you couldn't get it out of your nostrils for quite a while, and then that developed into living in a place that had been torn apart by war, and was getting further torn apart by war, and just seeing how it had destroyed the social fabric of the country.
Stephen, talk about how it was for you. You were in the first wave that went in, yes?
Yes, we were the first unit that went across the border coming from Kuwait. About 20 minutes into it, we were shot at by one of their opposing tanks, and we knew it was on. When we crossed the border, there was what's called a garrison flag, which is an American flag, but it's a huge size flag, where it wasn't like a welcoming committee, but it was to let us know it's time to do your job. And the one thing I take out of it is, like he's saying, you have that smell, you have all that, and we can't convey it to civilians, but the one thing we ask is for the sacrifices that the soldiers did make. Appreciate your freedoms.
That's very interesting. Steve, what do you want to add anything to that? Stephen? Can you hear me?
Stephen, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We were asking, did you want to add anything to that interview with the WGN Channel 9 clip?
Absolutely. As you heard Ray talking and as I'm talking, we serve with plenty of heroes over there, and there's a stress that comes from it. It's PTSD, and with the PTSD, it comes from traumatic experiences. And with these traumatic experiences, the problem is that a lot of these soldiers, that when they come back home, they have no one they can reach out to. They don't know who they can reach out to. There's plenty of organizations. I'm actually part of a great organization in Naperville, a VFW. It's called the Judd Kendall Post. It's with Commander Pablo Arroyo. Like, if there's any soldiers out there that would love to be part of the VFW, they could join us. But what we need to do is, when soldiers are getting out, they need to feel like important. They need to feel they could talk to someone. Part of the problem with the PTSD right now is that 22 veterans a day are killing themselves due to suicide.
Yep.
And there's plenty of hotlines out there. I talked to a lady this morning on a 1-800 number, and she was giving me some stats. Some of the stats this morning that I was getting is that soldiers, when they get out from 18 to 30, are more than double what it is a normal civilian. Veterans have mental illness. 2/3 of them have substance abuse. 50% of them have a disability. And these soldiers don't know that there's people out there. There's plenty of organizations. And it's a stigma of mental illness when there really isn't. It's more of a morale injury. You just need to change the verbiage. We need to let people know that it's okay. With the VA right now, they have a organization which is called Friends of Ward 8. And what could happen is you could become part of this, and they can also help you in a 6-week program get back to civilian thinking. I believe what we need to do is when a soldier joins the military, there's tons of in-processing. But when a soldier is getting out, there's a checklist. Hey, did you pay your cable bill? Did you clean your room? Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for serving. Then nobody seems to check up on them again. I believe there should be a 6-month program or a 12-month program or even a 5-year program, so they know that they're important. They're part of the civilian world, and that we're there for them. There is a couple phone numbers which I could give.
Go right ahead.
And some of the phone numbers there's a suicide hotline, which is 1-800-273-8255. Now, the thing about it is, for most millenniums, is they're not going on a call. So what's very important, they have a thing where you can just text now. If you text 741-741 and you type the word reach, somebody will be there for you immediately. And they're there to reach out to you.
That's
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Handwerker, that's great, because a lot of people, I'm sure, are totally unaware of it. And, the circumstance is increasing. So people like yourself really bring us a lot of help. And, of course, Steve Seidman, who does so much help with who's here with us, of course. The consulate does so much help with the veterans. Steve, you want to respond?
I
please.
think and it's interesting. It's ironic. Almost September is Suicide Prevention Month.
Right.
And what I was asking Steve before when we talked this morning, and I was asking him, why is it, do you think, that veterans who are discharged from service and active military have so many problems, and 22 deaths a day? I mean, that is an incredible amount. And by the way, Steve told me they span all the way from World War II to present day, and all of these groups. And it was said to me, and Steve said, here's why. If you go back to your high school buddy, your college buddy, you're talking about something, if they haven't served in the military, they don't get it. They don't get that what it's like to experience death, to kill somebody, to have that stench of death is what we heard in that clip. They don't get it, and they need somebody that they can actively talk to who does understand. And that's, and Steve was, and I commend him, because all he says is if I save one life, that one of the 22 a
great.
day even.
22 a day.
22 a day. Steve, is that the accurate statistic? Steve?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
Is it 22 a day?
Yes, it is. 22 a day is the number. They started doing a couple years ago on the lake. It's called Ruck 22. It's for veterans who are trying to help out to reach out to veterans so they know they have help. It's a staggering number, and I believe if we can reach out to these veterans when they're, let's call it ETSing, formally discharging, and let them know that we're there and let them know we care, we should be able to bring down those numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, 22 a day is the correct number.
We hope that
Yes.
this will happen. Our call-in line, by the way, is 312-374-8130. America's Heroes Group, 312-374-8130. If you have a question or want to make a comment, feel free to call us. Attorney Steve Seidman, of course, is with us. As always, he's, the America's Heroes Group Advisory Board member and sponsor, and does a lot of help with these folks. Counselor, what else do you think?
Well,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of various problems facing the military. In the last few months, we've gone through so many of them. Hopefully this week, Congressman Davis is going to help us through the changes with the Ferris Act.
Right.
That's
Ferris,
that's the Ferris doctrine, the doctrine that says that military personnel cannot sue for malpractice in a military institution while in service. We've talked about the hearing devices that were from that were given to veterans by 3M or Arrow, and they didn't work. In fact, that's how I met Stephen. He's one of those that was injured. We've talked about all kinds of things, sexual harassment in the military. This is something, and one thing about suicide, unfortunately, it's like people don't talk enough about it. If people talked a lot about it and dealt with it up front, we maybe would see less of it. Even in general society, we're seeing, I think, an epidemic of suicide, and that's why there's this awareness month right now. But with regards to active service personnel, getting some type of help straight away when they leave is imperative. And I don't exactly know how mechanically that works, Steve. Maybe you could tell us how that would work when somebody is discharged. How is it they're supposed to get this type of counseling right away?
Steve?
Well,
go right
yes,
ahead. I'm sorry.
yes. No, so as I was saying is I think part of our out processing that has to be for soldiers is when they sit down with their chain of command and they find out where they live, they need to find out where their VA center is, where their VA hospital is, and go over a list of things that they could do to help them. Maybe help them get a job, maybe help them get counseling, which is available. Like in Chicagoland, there's Hines Hospital. There's plenty of qualified counselors there that and if you don't have the time to go in, you could actually go over the computer and do a teleconference once a week. You could set up that time, and they're there to help you out. These soldiers sometimes they feel bad to ask out for help, and because civilians don't exactly understand what they've gone through.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, if you have someone that you care about and you love, and they're a hero and they've gone through so much, it's not so much. Don't tell them it's going to be okay. Listen to them. Bring up the conversation. Let them talk. That sometimes is therapy for them. And you know what? If you need to go with them to the VA hospital to get that help, go with them. They're going to tell you what they need.
I think that's a great thing what you're saying, Stephen. But I would suggest, and also to the consular, some people may need help, but they don't even realize it.
That's right. I think that the nature of PTSD is post-traumatic syndrome is you don't even know you have a problem.
Yeah.
You see people's personality change. People who love them know it, but they don't even realize it. And because of that, there needs to be some type of diagnostics done, figure it out, and help these folks understand what they're going through. Some people might think they're just depressed or angry, but it could very well be the PTSD. They've just, it's not unusual experiences. Yeah.
Absolutely. If I could touch upon one thing
Steve.
about that, if I can, please.
Sure, please.
PTSD, it could be flashbacks. It could be you waking up and seeing yourself in that situation again. But it could also be that now when you get back to the civilian world, you're on high alert and your anxiety is at an all-time high. Like you might walk in a restaurant and your back always has to be to the wall. You might always have a clenched fist. You might always be watching people when they put a bag down. There's all different types of PTSD. And like you said, Counselor, we need to help them get diagnosed. And if we could get them to get diagnosed, I think we could help a good percentage of them. And we could help a good percentage of them with these 22 a day. Sometimes when they come home, they might start drinking. They might start doing other things they shouldn't do. A lot there's a high divorce rate. A lot lose their jobs. But we need to be there for them. We need to let them know that, hey, it's important. Let's figure out what this is. Let's come up with a game plan and let's work together.
Well, you're certainly on point. And the one thing that I had mentioned before, I'm sure the consular heard me say this for the first time, I was happy to hear on 4th of July they were making an announcement, if you're using fireworks, think of the animals. But this time they added, and the veterans.
Right.
And I had never heard of that, do that,
Yes.
and that means something.
He one of the people, Bob Pavich, who tremendous lawyer, bright guy. He was a veteran for Vietnam. Every time he heard a firework, he dove.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a terrible
Right.
time for vets to have to experience all those. For instance, Steve was a Patriot missile man, and I mean, I could only imagine, hearing those fireworks go off.
Sure.
It makes a lot of people very, very concerned. Another form of PTSD. And I don't think what should be ignored also is the VA claims that can be made because of PTSD. Steve, they do exist, right?
Absolutely. There's actually a big percentage of us veterans who get turned down time and time and time again for our disabilities. For myself, I actually I wear hearing aids in both ears because of what happened in Iraq. I have tinnitus. I just did a hearing test a few weeks ago where they said I have severe hearing loss, and then they denied my claim for disability.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just not the disability where it could be where you're hearing. It could be mental, it could be physical, it could be anything. And for when somebody needs help and you keep denying them or trying to help them, whatever case it is, it doesn't start the beginning of the problem or the stigma to try to assist them in their everyday life.
And that's why we are so fortunate to have the consulate with us, Attorney Steve Seidman.
Thank you,
because
Cliff.
oh, absolutely.